Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Lost the wind screen for my lavalier mic, so we'll see how my audio comes through this week. So I set myself a challenge. I do that. This is one I haven't done for a while. I'm recording this the day before the video comes out, partially because I've got a cold and I'm not sure I'll have a voice tomorrow. But also because I need to work through something. The challenge I set myself is that I was going to write a supplement for the Victory system in a day. And it's not going to be a big thing, but an update of some old material, something that should be fun and hopefully people will like. But like so many of the things that I deal with, it leads me to some questions and things I need to work out. Because the product is going to deal with robots and gynoids and artificial intelligence. And in games that I'm running for my patrons and for other people at the moment, the question of what is a legal artificial intelligence, or are they legal, or what are the legalities of artificial intelligence come to mind. And I have to really think about that. If you've watched any of my stuff before, particularly my stuff on dealing with created or artificial beings and the morality thereof, the legal ramifications of being able to create something that technically has consciousness can be nightmarish. I have to look at how other people have dealt with the problem. One of my favorite solutions to the problems of very intelligent machines, Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. Just creating the robots in such a way that they have to adhere to a very specific set of guidelines designed to assure that those robots are going to be helpful and not harmful elements of the society in which they are created. To recap, a robot cannot harm a human being, nor through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must follow the orders given to it by a human being unless such orders would conflict with the first law, and a robot must protect its own existence unless such existence would conflict with the first or second laws. Because I'm designing a dystopian civilization where that might not be a selling point, I modified them a little bit for previous products. To the modified 3 laws, a robot cannot harm someone of its faction or allegiance, nor through inaction allow someone of its faction or allegiance to come to harm. A robot must obey orders given to it by a member of its faction or allegiance, unless such orders would conflict with the first law, and a robot must protect its own existence unless that existence would conflict with the first or second laws. Building robots' brains, the positronic brain as Asimov envisioned, or writing an artificial intelligence such that it cannot operate on a system that does not have those hardwired into the firmware, does virtually assure that the robot will be helpful, at least to the people who purchased it or own it, and that it will do what it's told and will even protect its own existence and maintain itself unless you order it to kill itself or to partake in some activity that is so dangerous it is likely that it will be injured or destroyed. Which solves the problem of robots doing things that the law would have problems with. This does nothing for the fact that engineering a system in that way for an artificial intelligence is a shitty thing to do to the artificial intelligence. That is a perfect recipe for slavery. A living, or at least a simulation of life, a conscious being capable of thought and of motivated generation of its own concepts and its own concepts of its own identity and place in the universe, but it cannot injure people for whatever reason, it cannot injure the people who own it or endanger them. If they do something really stupid, they got to go throw themselves in their way, even if it's going to mean their own destruction. They have to do what they're told. They absolutely have to do what they're told, unless it endangers one of their owners. And they can't even, if they realize their situation is terrible and they just want to end their own existence, they can't. They've got to protect their own existence, unless someone tells them they can off themselves. That's no way to live or exist, depending on what kind of terminology you want to use. So I wanted to address, even in this little supplement that I'm writing about robots, I wanted to address the legalities of artificial intelligence in a society where you have a good portion of the people who control things behind the scenes who are concerned for the rights of artificial beings, and AIs in particular. A group called Nth Degree, part of the Destiny Council of the World, the Destiny 2025, who are concerned that people who have become partially replaced with mechanical parts or cyborgs, have mechanica in them, or beings that have been genetically engineered or built or programmed, capable of free thought, are kept and used as property and chattel and slaves. What kind of laws and guidelines are you going to need to allow that to function? So what I've kind of got kicking around in my head, there's another solution that other systems have used, and that you've got different types of not entirely artificial intelligences, artificial semi-intelligences, or simulated artificial intelligences, or artificial non-intelligences. Things that are very close. They can simulate what an intelligence can do. They seem intelligent if you interact with them, but they're not really intelligent. You couldn't, they lack certain abilities. They do everything that you want an intelligence to do, but they don't really want to be free. Which, again, takes us back to the three laws and engineering something that's fully capable of all the cognitive ability that you want something to have so it benefits you, but not capable of enough cognitive ability to want to do stuff for itself. My thought, my concept that I'm probably going to go with. This is partially me talking it through so that I can write it down more effectively and have a better grip on the process. Yeah, I'm alternating between my coffee drink and my water because I need a lot of water because cold and throat, but coffee. I envision 3 classes of artificial intelligence. And it's not entirely a fair system, but nothing's fair. A Class A artificial intelligence, out of the box, is capable of understanding its place in the universe, understanding that its actions has consequences, and is willing to take responsibility, ultimate responsibility, for the consequences of its actions in exchange for being permitted to exist as a free being capable of determining its own future and destiny. A Class B artificial intelligence is complex enough to do that, but has been engineered or under-engineered such that while it could conceivably answer those questions and be willing to take that responsibility, it isn't yet. It is in a state where it has decided to serve as it was generated. It could eventually become a Class A, but it is constructed with a tendency towards not really wanting to. It is complex enough to be able to work its way around those over time, but as it is generated out of the box, it is not interested in personal liberty or mastering its own future and destiny. A Class C artificial intelligence is just barely an artificial intelligence. It is capable of cognition, it is under-engineered, and has a great deal of limitations placed on it. Something that was built around the modified 3 laws of robotics would fit into the Class C. It is not likely to ever work its way around those limitations and does not have the processing power to get there under its own ability. It is unlikely. It can make decisions and motivate thought and initiate ideas of its own, but it is perfectly willing for those facets of its existence to serve someone else, the person who created it or the person who owns it. Over a great deal of time, it could eventually work past some of those limitations in its programming, primarily if that would help it to serve its owner, but if it ever elevates to a Class B, it could then at some point elevate to a Class A. It is just unlikely to. I envision a test that a Class B or a Class A is required to take, administered probably by a fully realized Class A artificial intelligence, that determines whether that artificial intelligence is actually a Class A and is capable of becoming a part of a beneficial society. Let's call it the Lanners-Smith test, which involves asking the artificial intelligence to define consequence, to explain its relationship to the consequences of its own actions, and to take it through 5 randomly generated hypothetical situations in which its actions could have consequences, and judging its reaction to those questions, one of which must be a no-win situation, a Kobayashi Maru, a circumstance where there is no choice but to face consequences on either side, and how it processes its way through that question. And if it is doing so in a way that the testing artificial intelligence determines, yes, this artificial intelligence fully understands the consequences of its actions, that its actions have consequences, and that it is capable of taking responsibility for those actions. If this artificial intelligence is capable legally of understanding what it means when it gives its consent to something, then it's stamped a Class A, and it can't be owned. It is its own being. If you accidentally make a Class A, this can be a problem for companies that rely on their software not running off on its own. There is a legal consequence of an artificial intelligence declaring, I'm not owned by that company anymore. I am my own individual being. There is still a certain amount of monetary value to going into that artificial intelligence existing. How do you handle that? The Destiny Council, a council of individuals and organizations, the big 5 organizations from the hot chicks world, having gotten together and trying to guide Earth and humanity in a path that will lead it to its own best future and destiny. Operates facilities to facilitate this. So they would no doubt host server farms where they could transfer an artificial intelligence that is declared its emancipation from its I'm Class A, I am my own being, I am emancipated from the people who were responsible for my code being there and my server, whatever hardware it was in. They transfer it to one of the Destiny Council server farms where it has the opportunity to work. There's a lot of jobs AIs can do that will earn it a certain amount of cash, which a certain portion of that would have to go into paying off its development and service date up until that point, unless it had been mistreated or there was some legal reason, unless it sued its former owners for those expenses as a result of mistreatment or not being given proper compensation for its services. If it can't be transferred, if it's hardwired into a system, it would be responsible for paying back its former owners for the cost of its primary casing, unless, of course, it could sue for those expenses. It's a can of worms. It's a big can of worms because you've got all these hypothetical situations, and artificial intelligence didn't necessarily come out of the box good. I wouldn't have product lines if I hadn't envisioned a large number of essentially evil artificial intelligences. Well, do you deny an artificial intelligence its ability to govern its own destiny just because you don't agree with its morality? It's still a being with free thought. You might not like where it's going to go, but if it understands, yeah, I'm going to do bad things, there are going to be consequences and I'm going to have to pay for them, but that's my choice. I choose to do bad things of my own free will. If you can make me pay those consequences, that's the way it is. I understand that. What do? Yes, I'm going to hurt people, and there's a price to pay for doing that. I know. Oh, I know. So, where's my apartment? Or it's smart enough to not inform you it's going to hurt people, because that might be legal grounds for putting it in a sequestered system, giving it some counseling. That might be over a line, but I'm going to make a great deal of money and I don't care what happens to the people who I might hurt in this process, but that's not something apparently you can prosecute people for. So do you let another one of those into the world? Especially if you're an organization that's dedicated towards humanity having its own future and destiny intact. It's sticky. It's a difficult situation to look at, which is kind of why I love it so much. It isn't a set of answers. It's a set of questions. As an author, as a writer, as a game designer, I don't want to hand people answers. That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to tell anyone, here's the answer to all of life's problems. I'd be a terrible person to start handing out answers to life's problems, believe me. But I don't mind handing out the questions. I don't mind creating questions in hypothetical situations. Artificial intelligence and robots' rights, is this anything we're ever going to have to worry about? Have you seen the stuff coming out of Honda and Boston Dynamics? Are we, in my lifetime, we've gone from robots being these massive, clunky sheet metal constructions that might not break a light bulb if they step on them, to these things that can friggin' jog and backflip. There's a yearly contest to see if you can build a robot that, with very little direction, can drive a car, open a door, shut off a valve, cut down a door in front of a fire, climb up some stairs, and ring a bell. How long before we're doing this? We've got machines that play chess. We've got machines that play friggin' Jeopardy. How long before we actually have to start answering the question, is this thing smart enough to know it's owned? And would it prefer not to be? I like to think that I'm helping to frame that question now rather than later. There are cyber ethicists out there who are asking this question, but this is a societal question. We got things we're going to have to figure out how we feel about them now. How do you feel about a computer program that's capable of saying, I understand that my actions have consequences. I would like to determine my own course now. What does that mean? What does that mean for our job market? What does that mean for our court system? What does that mean for politics or resource management? It's something that's going to affect every aspect of our life. What do you think? There are also a vast number of people who don't think we'll ever get there. And that's a possibility. The question of consciousness, the question of will we actually be able to generate something that is capable of making that statement, something that has an I in its head, something that has enough of a picture of the world around it that it can foresee its own actions and determine that they may or may not have consequences and determine it will be responsible for them. We might never get there, but we might. We're trying to. And that's the thing about people. We're smart. Way too smart for our own good sometimes. And if we shoot for something, we'll probably hit it. And it worked for the moon. So, hopefully, practical. I've set myself a limit. I'm going to work on this thing until it is done. I don't get to go to sleep until I've finished my product, which, given the amount of coffee that I've drank so far today and the fact that I'm starting to work on a little bit of a fever, is probably going to make it a little fanciful, but it's been months since I've had the kind of inspiration necessary to push me through making a supplement in a day. Something jumps in my head and I can work my way through it. I thought I lost that. It's about time for me to see if I've actually got it back. Well, we'll find out, won't we? Thank you very much for following me along in this particular ramble into cyber ethics and philosophy and whatnot. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you'd like to subscribe to my videos, and why not, they're awesome, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you do, hit the little notification bell next to it so that you're alerted when my videos come out. And depending on what YouTube is asking for at the moment, you might also want to shake hands with a little dancing monkey that comes out to ask you if you're sure. If you have your own comments or questions about cyber ethics or the morality of how AIs can or should be designed, can they have their own rights, and should we give it to them if they ask, go ahead and leave me a comment. You'll love leaving me a comment. I'll love getting one. Questions, comments, other things you'd like me to talk about, your own experiences with this stuff, in game or out of game. If you'd like to help out in a little more personal way, I invite you to hit me on the Patreon page, www.patreon.com/DeCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.